Oh, welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we're going to add the next 20 creature cards with mana values of 4 into our Momir Vig cube. Thank you for choosing MTG Burgeoning for your Magic the Gathering content. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and consider becoming a subscriber. Doing so supports the channel and makes you eligible for our various subscriber rewards series. If you would like to support the channel further, then click the link to our Patreon page in the description below. There, you can join our ongoing Pack Wars series as a 1-month supporter or ongoing member. Or try joining Pack Wars for free by commenting on every MTG Burgeoning video in a month. We strive to offer creative rewards through our various Patreon tiers. So if Pack Wars isn't for you, then something else will be. Links to our content and various subscriber rewards series can be found in the description below. Send us an email, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We are your channel for all things magic. Salutations to the MTGBC. You are the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another installment of our ongoing Momir Vig Cube series. If you are unfamiliar with or have forgotten about the goals and purposes of this series, you can search in the description below for a link to MTG Burgeoning's introduction to the Momir Vig Cube. And while you're down there fishing in the description, you can also click the link to Cube Cobra, where you can see the entire contents of the cube as it stands right now. So for today, we got 20 creature cards with mana values of 4 going in, and the first is a colorless offering. We have Rampaging Monument. It's going to come in as a trampling artifact creature. It will ETB with 3 +1/+1 counters. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Rampaging Monument. Although every creature summoned from the cube is completely randomized, you'll never know how many multicolored creatures you'll get. You might get one, you might get none. Rampaging Monuments will be there waiting for those +1/+1 counters if you're fortunate enough to do so. Creature number 2, Rankle, Master of Pranks. We got a 3/3 fairy rogue with flying and haste, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you get to pick any number of the following. Each player discards a card, each player loses 1 life and draws a card, or each player sacrifices a creature. From the 4 spots, particularly in a format like Momir Vig, where there are no instant or sorcery spells to assist with any types of spot removal or mass removal, creatures like Rankle could be overvalued because of the number of removal or disruption abilities it has stapled onto its 3/3 flying hasty body. Sticking with mono black, we're going to go with Ravenous Chupacabra, 2/2 beast horror that when it ETBs, destroy target creature an opponent controls. So much of what we discussed with Rankle applies to Ravenous Chupacabra, except you get to pick the creature on the battlefield that you want to see head to the graveyard. Continuing our trend of when you go black, you never go back, we have Razor Jaw Oni, a 4/5 that can't block. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It's a 4/5 that has black creatures not able to block. So that means that it can't block, so I technically was right a little bit. I just wasn't 100% accurate. We have a 4/5 Demon Spirit that makes all black creatures unable to block. Reaching the 1/4 point of this video, our first mono blue offering, we have Reef Worm. It's a 0/1 worm, but when it dies, you will create a 3/3 blue fish creature token with, when this creature dies, create a 6/6 blue whale creature token with, when this creature dies, create a 9/9 blue kraken creature token. This thing is going to just continue to leave different parts of other kinds of creatures in its wake. It goes from 0/1 to 3/3 to 6/6 to 9/9. It truly never leaves the battlefield unless you can get it to be exiled or bounced to the player's hand, because every creature that's summoned from the cube is a token copy of that creature, and once it leaves the battlefield, it ceases to exist. All right, creature number 6, our first mono green offering, we have Renata, Called to the Hunt. It's got a toughness of 3. Its power is going to be equal to your devotion to green, which means however number of green colored mana symbols you have on permanents you control. And each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Renata will help to strengthen one of the themes woven into this Momir Vig cube, and that is the +1/+1 counter theme. Speaking of +1/+1 counters, in addition to being our first multicolored creature added to the cube in this video, we have Retaliator Griffin, a 2/2 Griffin, and it flies, and whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on Retaliator Griffin. This will cause headaches for opponents across the table because they'll never know whether you're going to block the creature down or up, or just let the damage through so you can have an even bigger flying evasive threat. All right, our first mono white edition, we have the Reveal Squad. It is a 3/3 that whenever we're attacked, if Reveal Squad is untapped, you may untap all creatures you control. So what that means is as long as you're being attacked, if we have this guy untapped, not sent into combat being tapped or any other way, we can quick untap all of our other creatures. And if our opponents are not, overly mindful to the abilities that the creatures we have on our side of the battlefield and sensed and missed this ability, then we're going to untap all of our creatures and probably end up sending many of their creatures right to the graveyard. Next up, we have Rock's Charger, a 3/3 trampler with the Exalted mechanic. Of course, Exalted is if this creature were to attack alone, it gets a +1/+1. Whenever a creature we control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. The wonderful evasiveness of Trample makes Rock's Charger a great candidate to send into Exalted combat, or perhaps the Retaliator Griffin, or any of the other creatures that you have that have some sort of evasion. All right, reaching the halfway point of this video, another multicolor edition, we have the Rasheen Meanderer, a 4/4 giant shaman. We can tap to add 4 colorless mana to our mana pool, and we can only spend this mana on casts that contain X. Do you know a cost that contains X? Well, yeah, I sure do. It is your Momir Vig Simic Visionary Avatar. So you can tap this creature to add 4 mana to your avatar, and you can summon copies of creatures from the Momir Vig Cube way ahead of curve. All right, beginning the second half of this video's creatures, we have Rowdy Crew, a mono red, that's absolutely definitely red. Mono red, I almost said white again, human pirate 3/3 trampler. When it ETBs, we draw 3 cards and then we discard 2 cards at random. If 2 cards that share a card type are discarded this way, we put 2 +1/+1 counters on Rowdy Crew. This is Momir Vig. The only cards that will ever be in our hands are lands, so they're all going to be basic lands. So we should further errata this creature's text box to read, when Rowdy Crew ETBs, draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards at random, put 2 +1/+1 counters on this dude, making them a 5/5 trampler. Next up, in another multicolored offering, we have Ruhan of the Fomari, a 7/7 giant warrior. At the beginning of combat on our turn, we choose an opponent at random, and Ruhan must attack that player this combat if able. There is no evasion on this creature, but a 7/7 for 4 mana that's going to attack an opponent. That should come up in our favor almost every single time. Going back to colorless creatures, now we have Runaway Carriage, a 5/6 trampler that whenever it attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at the end of combat. And here is a creature that we know helps to further one of the, shall we say, how do we want to put this? One of the themes woven into our Momir Vig cube is not every creature in the cube is going to be uber helpful or uber powerful, and in some instances, this one can actually hurt you because you're only going to get 1 use out of a creature that you spent 4 mana to summon. Back to mono black, we have Sanctum Seeker, a 3/4 vampire. Whenever a vampire we control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. Now, there are a number of vampires woven into this Momir Vig cube, so it's not unlikely that you will have other vamps lining up alongside the Sanctum Seeker, draining the table for 1 while we gain 1 life each time it triggers. And in a format where each player starts with 24 life, any additional ways to make our opponents lose life and to inflate our own life table should be highly coveted. Speaking of highly coveted, another mono black edition, we have Sangromancer, a 3/3 flying vampire. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we may gain 3 life. In a format that's driven by combat, many creatures are going to die. But here's the part that we can really count on. Whenever an opponent discards a card, we gain 3 life. Well, it says we may gain 3 life, but we're going to gain 3 life. In order to summon a copy of a creature from the Momir Vig cube, you must discard a card from your hand. Each time one of our opponents does that, we're going to uptick our life totals by 3. All right, and the last quarter creatures for this video, going back to monocolor, we have Scaretiller, a 1/4 scarecrow that whenever it becomes tapped, we may put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield tapped, or we may return target land card from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. With a beefy enough toughness at 4, it seems reasonable to think that we can get a couple activations off of Scaretiller. And when we do, let's be honest, we're going to target our graveyard for those lands. We have to discard the lands from our hand to summon copies of creatures from the cube, so let's get those lands from our graveyard as opposed to our hand, because we need those cards in our hand to discard in order to get those creatures. Next up, back to mono red, we have Scrapper Champion, a 2/2 double striking human artificer. When it ETBs, we get 2 energy counters. Energy is another one of the mechanics woven in as a theme in this Momir Vig cube. When Scrap Champion attacks, we may pay 2 energy, and if we do, we put a +1/+1 counter on it. That makes it a 3/3 double strike, and if we've got other energy synergies, then that creature is going to get out of control very quickly. All right, creature number 18, and we're going old school here, back to the days of 8th edition. We have Seasoned Marshal, a 2/2 soldier that whenever it attacks, we may tap target creature. This will allow us to tap down our opponent's best blocker, or perhaps one of our opponent's best utility creatures. Next up, creature number 19, back to mono blue, we have Secret Keeper, a 2/2 spirit. As long as we have more cards in hand than each opponent, Secret Keeper will get +2/+2 and flying. So the floor of this is a 2/2 walker, with the ceiling being a 4/4 flyer. Enough to be pseudo-valuable, enough to be a little bit of a detriment for the investment of 4 mana into what could be just a 2/2 chump blocker, I suppose. All right, creature number 20, bringing this video to a close, we have Seraph of the Sword, a 3/3 angel of flying. We prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to Seraph of the Sword. This is the ultimate let her sit back, stay untapped, and block any potential threat that she can. Outside of any trample-y damage, she's going to prevent all damage that will be dealt to her and to us. And there you have it, MTG BC. 20 more creature cards with mana values of 4 into the Momir Vig cube. Let me know in the comment section below, which are your favorites. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.